We are back to high school basketball as summer's quickly approaching. I haven't seen you guys since last season ended, and it was awesome talking to different coaches across the state, getting this podcast up and running. It has been so much fun to learn about the game from other people who know much more than I. I've got a familiar face with me here today as we discuss rule proposals and procedures. Jay Benish, thanks for joining. How's it going, man?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking some hoops today before we head into summer here. So,
Absolutely, man. And if you hang out till the end of the episode, you'll get an announcement from Jay and I about what we have coming up. I'm not going to spoil it now. You got to hang out until the end. The purpose that I have you on today is because you know the processes of the ins and outs of the background of high school basketball. So, how the rules get approved and how the Coaches Association operates, and how the board operates. And I don't think everyone does because we see on social media, you just go on X and you see tons of coaches all fired up about every which rule possible. And I'm not sure everyone fully understands how they are implemented. So I wanted someone to come on who could explain here's how this works, here's why it's not passing, here's why this passed, then maybe the implications of these rules. So let's start with the hottest topic, Jay. We're going to go to shot clock. Half of the country has approved of it as like they've started it or will start it. I know I'm living in Illinois now, and they start not next year, but the year after. So they're kind of not fully planning for it yet, but they're in the process of figuring out what they're going to do. They have a year to figure it out, and it's a big deal. And Wisconsin, among other states, can't seem to get it approved. What do you think the hangup is for the shot clock for the states that don't have it?
yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and it's one that we've been wrestling with as a coaches association for a number of years now. And, I've been really fortunate to be brought into the coaches association by Jerry Pettigrew about 12 years ago. So being in on those meetings and understanding, what we're trying to accomplish and how we're trying to go about it has been really eye-opening for me. A lot of stuff I didn't know about as a coach before getting involved. And we work hand in hand with the WA as an association. They come to our board meetings, they send representation and talk to us about where we're at with stuff and what we need to be doing to get it, further along. And like you said, it's a process. And I guess I would just challenge coaches out there before you go and post anything, do your homework. Like, make sure you know the facts and the details of how this stuff happens, and understand that it's not as easy as just saying, "Hey, we want this. Let's do it." Like, if it was that easy, we'd already have it. You know what I mean? Like, the WA has steps in place for a reason, so that sports can't just pass a bunch of rules and then decide after the fact they don't want them, and now you got to bring them back. And so they really want to make sure that it's what you want, and it's going to make the game better, and that people can do it. That it can be something that every school district in the state can do, and that's really their job as an association in the WA, is that they have to look out for every district, the small ones, the large ones, everybody in between, and they got to do what's best for their membership, and that we got to keep that in mind when we're trying to get the shot clock, that not every district's equal.
Yeah.
And being here in Oconomowoc, we understand that hey, if we wanted a shot clock, we could figure out how to get it done now, but there's some districts that it might take them 5 years to be able to get it in place, and to be able to afford to do it, and that's kind of when the WA has a mix of superintendents and principals and athletic directors from all different size schools. Those are the discussions that are happening behind the scenes, with logistics to it. So, I would say, last year was the closest I think we've got since it was at a membership vote about 3 or 4 years ago. Um, and the process is it has to pass like three committees, and then it gets to the last committee, and that usually is a group of like district superintendents. There's 10 of them, and if they pass it, then it goes on, and the membership gets to vote. So the entire state, every school has a vote, and if it passes that, then it goes in. And like you were talking with Illinois, it'd be similar for us. Like, we would have a year where we can kind of trial run it. Schools that have shot clocks and or want to get them right away could trial run, probably in non-conference games or holiday tournaments, and then the
Hmm.
year after it would go in full go. And I think, we're finding that to get things through, we've got to make sure that we have all of our stuff lined up as a coaches association. We have to make sure that We have facts, and we have these polls and surveys we send out that we want people to get involved with. We got to be able to bring those details to them and say, hey, 90% of the coaches want a shot clock. Like, that's a big deal that the coaches want it, players want it, fans want it. And as we can take that to these committees and call up each member of the committees individually and say, hey, we really want you to vote yes for this and put it through to a membership vote. Let's let the schools decide if this is what we want, not a 10-person committee. And a lot of them will be receptive to that. Yeah, there's no reason we should hold this up. Let's let it get through. And like I said, last year we got it to that last committee, and unfortunately they decided to wait a year here. And we're hoping maybe to get it, to a membership vote at some point here soon. Um, and there's a lot of things out there where people are saying, well, schools can't afford it. And I
Hmm.
think when you look at the details of it, there's a lot of vendors in the state and nationally that sell shot clocks that if you want to buy one and have it wired to the top of your backboard, like you see in college and the pros, the labor of wiring those in and like having them attached to your backboard is about $7,000 one time fee. But they do have shot clocks you can just put on the ground on the baseline that plug in and they work the same way, that are about $300 or $400. And in talking with a lot of these vendors and having them talk at our meetings, they're willing to work with schools too and say, hey, we'll give you 3 years to pay this, or we'll give you a nice discount because the whole state's going to buy them. So if we can get a deal where the whole state goes through one vendor, they're going to give a nice deal to everybody and give a percentage off. So I think we're starting to move the right direction with some of the pricing things. I think personally for me, like my biggest problem with people saying it's the cost of it is just like when you go to a gym or a field house and you look up on the wall and see a camera sitting up there from Huddle and know that every school pays $3,000 a year to keep that camera alive up there and so we can live stream games and record stuff. Like somehow you're coming up with $3,000 every year to pay for that. A one-time fee of a few hundred or 7,000 or whatever it ends up being to put your shot clock in, to me it feels like, if it's important we would do it. We could
Yeah.
figure out a way to get it done.
I like playing the role of the audience in some of these discussions I have on this podcast. And even though I may know the answer, I like asking these questions. So, just to preface that, how much say does a coaches association really have with the WIAA or any state regulatory board? Is it like a parent whose son wants to go to Applebee's? It's not really like you don't really have a say. I might let you say, like, you know what I mean? Or do they really legitimately have a say in it?
Yeah, I mean, our job is to provide the facts and the details to them so they can make the best decision possible. In the end, like it it doesn't matter how badly we want it as an association. Because if, like I said, if we wanted it, Coach Pettigrew's been championing this for 5 to 7 years now, and he'll stand on top of the soapbox and preach about it. But it's like, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And if anybody in the state as a coach carries any weight, it's a guy like him who's been around doing it for a long time and is very well respected. And so our job is more to say, here's how it can positively affect student athletes. Here's how it can positively affect the game. Here's why we think it would be good. Not just because every other state's starting to go do it. It's because it's what's best for Wisconsin basketball, high school basketball, and for our kids. And so I think that as a coach, you got to think about that. How would that affect the game for you? When you're coaching a basketball game. And we've even went as far as to like stat out last year's state tournament and see how many times the shot clock would have affected
Mm.
possessions, to see like if we could take that to them and go, you know what? It would have maybe only interrupted like the games 10 times over the course of the state tournament. The shot clock would have went off.
Yeah,
That's not a lot of interruption. You
right.
know, um, it maybe would have maybe affected the end of close games where coaches maybe would have played a zone instead of staying in their traditional man to man for one possession because they knew the shot clock was going to let them get out of it. You know what I mean? Or added some
Hmm.
strategy to it where those coaches now can do that. They can take a timeout and know, hey, we got 35-second shot clock. We can't just sit and stall here. Or maybe we're going to take a quick foul instead of letting the shot clock run down this possession, knowing that we can keep some time on the clock. And
Yeah.
I think those are the things coaches really got to ask those questions, like how does this affect your style and how you might coach the game. And I think if you asked, and we have asked because it's we really want this to happen, we we've asked a lot of states that have had it in place now that were hesitant to do it. Like, how has it been going? You're 3 years into it. You're 5 years into having a shot clock. Some states you're 10 years in.
Hmm.
Have you regretted doing it? Is there any regrets, or like, are there any like troubleshooting you've had to do to like make it better? And almost, I would say 100% of them came back and said, "There's no way we would ever go back
Yeah.
to not having a shot clock. Like we love it. It's been a really good piece of like the game for their student athletes." And I think that alone should say we need to take a serious like look at getting this through to a membership vote. It'd be different if you had other states that are going, nah, this isn't working. Like our small schools really don't like this, or our large schools or girls basketball, or they have a concern in some area of that we need to think about. But every state we've talked to said this has been great, and here's why. Here's an
Yeah.
article by a local paper that explained why the shot clock's been a positive thing,
Yeah.
as they added
Yeah,
it. So
I would say that that's a huge thing is asking other people for advice. I think so many times the human condition is I'm gonna set my opinion and I don't care what anyone says. When I've learned why I started this podcast and what I've learned through coaching and now as my in my current job in ministry is ask other people, is this working? Is this not working? Why? Why not? Learn from other people. For example, NIL was approved for Wisconsin several weeks ago, and there was a lot of noise on Twitter, and I fired off some tweets because I like to drive engagement for this podcast. I don't always mean the things I say. I mean, that's just an inside here. But it's good for engagement. And a lot of people are like, you have no idea. NIL is never gonna affect more than 5 kids. NIL, and it's not. You're stupid. So I was like, I don't really like it. So everyone's telling me how it's gonna work before it's even worked. And I have a coach from Florida messaged me on X, and he said, just so you know, I have a kid right now who's working through the NIL process, and it is a major headache. Right. So like you just never asked, and you don't like, so with the shot clock you ask people if they all love it and it's perfect and it's great for the game, then that means something. So I get bothered by people who just have their opinion, whether it's a board, whether it's a person, and just goes, I have a feeling, I'm just going to have go with that feeling. But I do want to read the poll numbers.
yeah,
There's like a coach vote poll numbers on shot clock. 67% of coaches said yes, 23% said no, 9.8 not sure. Our school is prepared for shot clock. 48% said somewhat. 28.9 said not prepared. 19% said prepared. Makes sense because literally not prepared for it. Like you just don't have the stuff. And then
yep.
lastly, this is my favorite one, Jay. Would you support a pilot trial, like a tournament or something? 76% said yes. 16 said no. 8 said not sure. Why do you care if a tournament uses a shot clock that you're not at? That drives me nuts, man. I'll let you share any thoughts you have from those results or anything else.
Yeah, that's pretty on target with all the polls that we put out as well. And I know there's several people out there that are doing polls right now of coaches for shot clock. And yeah, I think the only way you're going to know how it works and if you like it is by using it. So whether that be, hey, we're going to play in a summer league this year, it's using shot clock just so we can see what that looks like, or our holiday tournament, we know ahead of time they're going to use a shot clock. We're choosing to get into it,
Right.
knowing that, what I mean. Like we're not just jumping in a tournament and then a week before they're going, hey, by the way, we're going to use a shot clock now. But I think most coaches just don't know, and you hit it on the head. Like ask, like get your facts, like figure out like if this is something that how it would affect you personally as a program, or as your program. Don't worry about everybody else. Like we all have to figure out if it works. But I think in the end, like with the other states in the nation picking up on this and starting to pass it, I think that puts pressure on states like us that don't have it to say like, all right, like almost every state's going to have this soon. When do we go? I think it's a matter of when, not if, in Wisconsin to get this in. And I think, there's going to be a push, I think, in the next few years to model or to follow suit with, so everybody's aligned. International basketball uses 4 quarters and a shot clock and resets fouls at the end of every quarter. NBA, college, still 20-minute halves, right? But I think there's going to be a push to possibly even switch the men over to 4 quarters like the women already have.
Hmm.
And I could see that trickling down to high school. Like right now, if you talk to the WA, we're not in compliance with the National Federation because we do halves and they want quarters.
Yeah, what does that
Okay.
mean? Why is some states not in a national federation and most are? How does that happen?
Well, it really, all it affects is like it gives you a seat at the table as a state to vote on anything that would come up nationally as far as rule changes or whatever else. So because we do halves, we don't get a vote when it comes to
Mm.
basketball related things, and so to me, like maybe a good trade off with the WA would be to, hey, we'll go to quarters, 9 minute quarters, so we keep the same amount of time, but let's bring in the shot clock then if we're going to go back to quarters. Because if you remember back, we were at quarters and we switched to halves because teams were stalling at the end of each quarter and holding the ball, and it became kind of boring basketball to
Yeah.
watch because everybody thought, well, I'll sit on it the last 2 minutes of the half because our team maybe can't compete with the team we're playing, or that's just our style. We're going to slow it down. And so I think like maybe down the road it's like, hey, let's go to quarters and add the shot clock. Let's do it all in one big thing, and like and then reset the fouls every quarter, like go to the whole thing so it's all aligned with other states and college, pro, international. And I just think it gives basketball kind of a better flow from kids that might go from high school to college or have
Yeah.
the really good fortune to make it all the way to the NBA or to a pro league or something. It's
Right.
I just think it
I'll
makes
say
sense.
this, man. I think I don't care about quarters or halves as much, but I will say coming being back in Illinois and being in quarters again, the halves flow a lot better. And I'm fine with being on
Oh,
the same page, so I don't care like that much is like what I'm saying, but it flows so much better. I went to the Illinois the state games, subsectionals, all that stuff because it's the town I live in, went to state this year, and their games were in the 30s and 40s. And I was like, guys, you have no idea. Wisconsin games are in the 60s, like pretty average, right?
yeah.
So I think shot clock would probably help with that. And that's just kind of a random thought I threw in there.
Well,
But
to your
it,
point, though, I'll be curious in Illinois when the shot clock comes in, how that changes the scoring. If it is low scoring right now with quarters, like does that speed things up a little bit and get teams maybe playing a little faster pace? I
right.
don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see.
Right. Let's move on to sectional placements. This is another thing that got a lot of coaches on socials up in arms about this year. And we did a playoff preview show, Brett and I did, and we went over this. There are some sectionals that was like the three best teams in this division are in this sectional. Now that's objective, but it's a thing that a lot of people want change, but I don't think it can change because of intel I've gotten. Some people who are in the know have told me the state wants geographic representation. And by the way, this isn't just Wisconsin, because I do have people listening now from other states. This is everywhere that I've heard. Like Illinois, Chicago has the best teams in the state, but they get one sectional and they play a team from Central Illinois to Southern Illinois. The four Chicago teams could be the four state teams every single year. So I have to imagine if they did that, people would be like, that's not fair. They always get to go to state. We never have anyone get to go to state. So I'm guessing that's probably one of the reasons why. Right? Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, going back to thinking about the WA, and it's their job to represent all their membership and to give them the opportunity to like have representation from their region to get to state. So again, that's why you see them do that, and I don't think you'll change that. You know what I mean? But one of the things we have going right now is we have a petition going, and we also have already passed the first committee on that step process where I was talking about to get 8 teams at every division to state, which would mean we'd start our state tournament on Wednesday, finish on Saturday. It would add some really good quality games, I think, to the state tournament lineup. There's a lot of factors in this, and when we present this to the WA and we have our fact sheet and everything else, and we've been posting it out on social media as well on Instagram and Twitter. You can find it probably from our state association sites. They've been posting a little doc we put together. If you look at Iowa, they have 11% of their boys get a chance to go to state every
Mm,
year. In Minnesota, it's 8%. Okay, in Wisconsin, it's 4%.
mm.
So 4% of the student population gets to play in the state basketball tournament. We're not even close. I mean, that
No,
like
no.
why are we not allowing more communities and more student athletes to get to experience what it's like to get to Green Bay for the girls or get to Madison for the boys and celebrate that your team, and even if you get beat in the quarterfinals, like that's still a really cool moment for a small town or a large community to be able to shut down and come and watch your team play in a setting like the Kohl Center or the Rush Center. And I think it doesn't cost anything. I think it's something that you know, yeah, we have to maybe reserve the Kohl Center and the Rush for an extra day. you know.
Hmm.
But again, that's worth it. It's worth trying to get those venues for that, to have those. And the other thing I look at, and I mentioned it to you before, you look at a guy like Konkanipa, who's going to be a top 10 pick this year in Wisconsin. We got to see him play one time in his 4-year high school
Right.
career, his senior year, and it was amazing. Like just seeing him out there, and like the quality of games. There's other big name players too that were playing in that state tournament against him, and just some great games. He had got knocked out in the sectional final, I think 2 years previous. That would have been a state tournament quarterfinal game had we had
Yep.
8 teams at every division. And we miss out on a lot of these games. And you go back, a handful of years ago, we used to have super sectionals where they would be isolated on a Tuesday night before state tournament, and they would be the best games. Some of those super sectional games were better than the state games, for your
Yep.
exact reason, because some of the better teams come from certain areas and they're playing each other in a sectional instead of at state. A lot of people would go pack the Al McGuire Center at Marquette to watch a super sectional, and it was awesome. The atmosphere was great, and I think we want to get back to that, but maybe have it at state and have it be a part of the state tournament process. To go back to your question about the sectionals, now you get 8 teams at state, so the sectional lines get redrawn too. So now you
Yeah.
have 8 sectionals instead of 4. So if you think about it, some of these teams that maybe have always had to go against the same opponents to try to get out of their sectional, you may get slid over into a different sectional now because there's eight sectionals instead of 4. And I think that's exciting. Like in our area here, it's a dense area around Milwaukee in the suburbs, so you see a lot of the same teams every year. Or we get shipped to the Fox Valley where there's really good basketball up there, or to Madison where there's really good basketball there. And our
Yeah.
sectional in the past few years, like we've had maybe 4 ranked teams in the top 10 in our sectional. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, like to get out of here, you got to play some really good basketball. But again, only one of those 4 ranked teams is going to have a shot to get to Madison.
Right.
Where now with the new proposal, potentially 2 of those teams gets through.
I can speak as someone personally affected by this. I would have been playing a state game at
Yeah.
the Kohl Center or somewhere, cool. And I can tell you for like a minimal cost, it would have changed every kid in my program's life.
Yep.
It would have, I mean, it was already a very good experience making it to that, super sectional. Um, but just that one extra thing, if we're really about representing kids and having an experience for them and growing the game, I think too. I think that's a really big deal. I have a few comments, and you can respond to almost any of them. First one about voting for this on the petition. Number one, I think we'll post it probably Monday with this podcast episode, so I'll put a link following it on X and stuff, so you can click on it and vote. The second thing is it's like a presidential election, right? Like if you don't vote, then don't complain about it. Like you should just vote. Like it's a very simple thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, the petition's just one piece. If we get enough stakeholders that sign the petition, it's a good piece for us to take to committee members that are maybe on the fence and go, hey, you know what? Right now, there's 100 officials have signed the petition. I just saw it the other day. 100
Mhm.
refs, because we forget it affects refs too. More refs now get to ref
Yeah,
state tournament games, and they're
yeah,
excited about that. Administrators are signing the petition. We have it so they can select. I'm an administrator. I think this is good.
yeah,
Fans, players, coaches, your normal stakeholders are going to want this. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I think it's those people that you don't think of, that it's like, wow, we didn't think about them, and this affects them too. Like this is a positive, not just for the coaches and the players who get to go play in these games, but the fans who have been coming to the state tournament their whole life with their grew up going with dad or mom and dad to the state tournament games and watch these, and now they get an extra chance to see more teams and better players. And
yeah,
the petition is really a vehicle to be able to take it, keep moving step by step through the process. And if
yeah.
we can get that aligned and have some good data out of that, then just gives us one more thing to stack into our slideshow that we're presenting and talking through why this is a positive for the kids in our state.
Right. It's like I tell people every podcast episode, if you just rate and subscribe and review this podcast, it takes you, 1 inch of movement to your thumb up and down. And it's that easy. It's the same thing with voting. It's that easy to vote and do that kind of stuff. I want to paint a picture of two different scenarios. The first is I went to, like I just mentioned, I went to the Illinois sectionals and state games this year, and their state sectional final. for our area was held at the Bank of Springfield Center. So we have this kind of arena that hosts concerts in Springfield in the capital. And it was awesome. It was an unbelievable experience. And there were so many people there. You didn't fill it, obviously, because it's a massive arena. But then there's two games. You had the Division 3 and the Division 1 back to back. So you got to see both. And then my experience playing in the sectional final was at Whitewater High School, and we pull up to the high school about an hour and a half before the game, and there's a line of people like all the way around the door. It was really, really cool. But I got texts probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the game from people that said I tried to get in, I couldn't get in. It was sold out. And I was like, man, that's too bad. I wish I could go bring you in. I can say this now. I brought one guy in and said he was my manager, put him in there. But like it just
It's a good
stinks
move.
that people don't get to see the game. Like everyone that wants to watch a basketball game should get to watch it at that level. So have them, even if you can't do it at the Kohl Center. I feel like Edgewood or even Sun Prairie schools, like do them in the Madison area, is at least a win in the right direction. Like I want as many people to watch the game as possible to grow the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and when you get to those sectional finals, like I grew up in a really small town here in Wisconsin. We have about 800 people in my hometown. So, we got to sectionals one year, and other teams in our area would get to sectionals, and it wasn't just their own community that wanted to go watch. It was, the neighboring communities, small communities also know those kids and know those players, and they want to go support. Like if
Yep.
our school doesn't make it, the way small towns do it, if our school doesn't make it, I'm going to go support the team that down the road that did, and I think that, that's why you see if you pick too small of a venue, people can't get in and watch and can't go
Yep.
do that. And, and it's a disservice. Like you said, I mean, everybody that wants to get in should be able to get in. There shouldn't be a problem finding a seat. And, if it's a 4,000 seat arena and we sell it out for small to mid school size basketball game, hey, that's great. That's a good problem to have. Like that
Yep.
means that people really think this is a good matchup and they want to check it out. So I hope that this plan could move through this year because I think we could get it in place next year, already for next season. The WA even sent out a memo just saying, hey, we're going to hold off on giving your sectional assignments right now. They normally would be released here pretty soon. We're going to hold off until we see if this plan comes to fruition and we can move it
Mhm.
along. And I think that's a good sign on our end that, hey, they're at least coming to the table, listening, and think that this plan could work. Along with their media partners are another piece of it because they broadcast the games on TV, that they have to be on board with how they would broadcast another day's worth of games because again they're shutting down TV across the state on their channels to have the games on, so
Right.
you got to think about there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of stakeholders that all have to agree and think this is a good plan, and I
Yeah.
think, like you said, I mean, the more we can move this along, hopefully we start eliminating some of those things where you got to bring some guy in as your manager because he couldn't get in the game, so
Some of the guys who didn't get in were your guys. I forgot. It was
oh man.
Ray and Patrick and Caleb. They were going to college at Whitewater and they were going to come to the game. I was like, guys, you're gonna have to get there like an hour and a half early. I'm telling you. No, we're fine. We're fine. Like,
I
you
was gonna
did not.
say there's no way those guys made it on time, so
There's no. But speaking of numbers watching games, I didn't even talk to you about this. What about the state numbers being down? That has to be because of the watchability of it being on TV next to March Madness, right?
yeah, I think you see that in a lot of years where the NCAA tournament aligns, opening weekend of NCAA tournament aligns with state, where I'll tell you, Madison was packed. I was there.
Hmm.
Yeah, you go down Regent Street or State Street, and there's tons of people. So it's not like there wasn't people there to that wanted to go into the games. I think it was more so, hey, I could go sit here and watch both the high school games and the college games
Hmm.
instead of buying a ticket and going into the Kohl Center. And that's something that's hard to avoid. That you're not going to
Right.
fight March Madness. I mean, that's a national holiday for some people. So it's part of it. And I think adding that Wednesday in could be really good though, because now you're not fighting March Madness on Wednesday. You might be on Thursday, but I think your attendance on those Wednesday games could be pretty good if people come down for all 3 or 4 days. So
Is it possible at all to not get that break in between games? There's two games, a big break, two games. Because one of my theories is I went to the state games, and every time that intermission came, I went out and I didn't come back. And because you leave and you're having fun now. You're at a restaurant, you're at a bar, you're watching the tournament. If I never would have left, I probably would have stayed. Is that possible, or do they have to have those intermissions for the stadium? You may not know this.
I think it's actually more of a TV thing. I
Mm,
think they got to take like breaks for the TV stations to be able to run some programming in between. I could be wrong on that, but that would be my best guess. And then
yeah,
I think it gives the Kohl Center people a chance to clean up a little bit too, to stay ahead, so they're not at the end of the night having so
yeah,
much garbage. I don't know. I mean, just a couple
right.
thoughts, but
Because I was like,
I
if I could get those games at 5 and 7 instead of what is it 7 and 9. The last year was in overtime. It started at 9:30. I was in bed before the game even started, which is really funny. My Hulu picks up Wisconsin channels still, so I was able to watch State this year.
hey.
But that last game, man, I was like, I'm not staying up for this because I'm old and I've got young kids. So that's a late start, man.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it is. I don't, like I said, I don't know. I think the timing's pretty set based on, like I said, the TV schedule. I think they kind of drive that
Yeah.
more than anything. So, I think there's be some people that would argue why not start earlier in the day. You could
Mm,
maybe get that first game an hour earlier. I don't know. I mean, I think that part will be hard to mess with when it comes down to figuring that out. But I agree. I mean, people do leave in those intermissions and then don't come back always, or you know that's where I think if you had better matchups maybe, or like had the you know quarterfinals lead to some good semifinal games like that people want to come back and see, like, hey, we got to make it back over because so and so's playing, or this team, we want to see this team. Now you maybe get them to come back, and that's
yeah.
not, well, this team's going to beat this team, and so why go watch that when we watch the NCAA tournament,
Right. I remember one year I saw you guys out at a restaurant or something, and I didn't come back, so I was just hanging out with you guys. So you just never know. And if you keep them in the stadium somehow, they can't come. They can't not come back. There's one more rule. I guess I'll say problem. I personally do think this is a problem. I'm not sure what the immediate solution is, and it's the seating. I always assume when I'm recording this podcast that someone's listening from another state, so I'll explain. In Wisconsin, there's computerized seating. Like I know Illinois, the coaches still vote, and they were shocked when I told them that we do computerized seating. And essentially, there's a formula, unbeknownst to coaches, that projects and picks the seeds for the playoffs, and it's based off something probably along the lines of win-loss record, opponent win-loss record, but it counts out of state teams as 500 teams. And a lot of the coaches are upset about this because there's a lack of head-to-head factor. There's a lack of transparency. And this poll that was sent out to all the coaches, the number one issue on the whole poll over shot clock, over everything else, was voted transparency in the seeding process. And then among that was criteria used for seeding being confusing, lack of public access communication, and then conference divisional weight. I, there's just I go both ways on this, Jay, because I'm a cynical person at the same time too. So I'd go, if I told you the seeding formula, you would still have the problem. It would just, this problem now would be that you don't like the formula. So it goes from I have a problem not knowing to now I know and I have a problem about the formula. So I don't think it cures the angst over it. What do you think about this whole process?
So behind the scenes, after each year, there is a committee that tweaks the formula,
Yeah.
and they obviously know the formula and they understand that there's concerns. So they try to look at where the computer maybe got it wrong, and why it was wrong. What was there too much weight added to this, or not enough weight added to head to head, like you're saying, or whatever it might be. And so that group of people really try to tweak it, and then they rerun it. So they'll
Mm,
rerun last year's like state tournament and see how it would have affected the state tournament seedings, or the state seedings for the tournament. And so it's one of those things. I think you're not ever going to have it perfect. Like, but you didn't when coaches voted either, because you
yep.
could get a group of coaches that were all from one league together, and they could say, "Well, let's help each other make sure we get the seeds we want."
Yeah.
And that did happen. I've sat in on those meetings where coaches like colluded ahead of time to say, "Let's vote this way," or "Let's make sure that we get matchups first round that are going to help us or benefit us."
Right.
You know, it's no different really with the computer. It's never going to be perfect. there's a lot of ideas out there of ways we can fix it, and a lot of people that don't understand the process of that either, where they just are like, well, the computer got this wrong and here's why, or it screwed us over. Okay, well, if maybe 3 or 4% of the state like has an issue with it, 97% success rate is pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think we got to look at it that way too, that yeah, there are some things that way. Like for example, this year they tweaked the out of state thing. They were able to put in the records of the out of state opponents to be able to give teams credit for beating a good team from Minnesota or Illinois or Iowa or whoever they were playing. So that helped that a little bit. You know what I mean? But still, you still have people that are unhappy that we beat that team head to head and
Yeah.
they got a higher seed than us. How did that happen? And
Yep.
so I don't know. I mean,
I
I
don't
think
think you can win. I don't think you can win though, because no matter what, there's no way for a computer process to capture. For example, the last year I coached, I had, in my opinion, one of the best players in Division 3 on my team. We were a good team. He got hurt. He was out for the season. We lost 8 in a row by like 30 points. So like there's no way for a computer to capture that. So I think that's part of the process that just have to accept when it comes to that. I do think you have to accept that you don't know the weight. Because like I said, I'll reiterate, if you know the weight, it's just going to open Pandora's box to now everyone's going to critique it,
yeah.
dissect it, say what's wrong. Do I think it's perfect? No, I think there's a lot of tweaking to it. So I see both sides of this. I can see how someone could be really peeved that they felt like it was their year and they got, quote unquote shafted on a seed. I could see that from a human standpoint, but I could also see the committee standpoint and go, no matter what we do, you're going to be mad. So,
Yeah, I'm sure they don't lose sleep over it, to be honest with you, because they're doing their best to try to put something out that works, But
Yeah, the coaches suggested a few things that I've heard. I want to know if you think any of these are reasonable or just 0 for 3, none of them are going to happen. The first one is make the criteria public. Do you think that's ever going to happen?
I don't, not right now. I think you get 5 years into this and you've tweaked it for 5 straight years. You may get to a point where you think you've got it pretty close to where it's going to be, and then release it and say, "Hey, here's what it is.
Mm,
Like we feel pretty good about it. Here's what it is." I think it's going to take allowing them some time to make the tweaks every year until that committee kind of feels like, yeah, I think we're close. I don't know.
okay.
That's my
Uh,
guess.
the second one is delay the I don't know how this really falls into this specific category, but it was delay the sectional placements in an attempt to balance the sectional seedings a little bit better. So instead of releasing sectionals, in the summer, they release them in December. So that way it's a little bit more balanced. You use the computer formula to determine who the best teams are in this area and make sure at least the areas are somewhat split. That's probably not possible. Am I right on that?
There has been some talk of that, and I don't know at what levels. To be honest with you, I haven't been a part of them, but I know I've heard that some people have brought that up. That hey, what if we wait and release the sectionals in January, and
Mm,
then use the computer to kind of show that. The other one that came up along with releasing the sectionals or setting the sectionals later, um, that I've heard was, well, why don't we use the computer and run it starting at the end of January every Sunday night? A poll comes out with your sectional ranked out.
mm,
And so
yeah,
now like at least going into the final weeks of the season, like, hey, you know what? We're behind this team and we have them coming up on our schedule. That's a big game. We beat them head to head. That might be enough for us to bump over them and get a better seed.
yeah,
I think as a coach, I would really like that because I can show my kids then, hey, we just beat so and so, and you know what? Look, we just bumped up 2 spots in our sectional. Like that was a big win
yeah.
for us.
That would be great for podcasts.
It'd be awesome for you.
You see, every Sunday night you have new content, and I think that would be. I mean, but just cool factor alone, like ESPN type rankings and things like that. I think that's just like a cool addition. I don't think anyone gets hurt by knowing where it's at.
It's kind of a regional ranking, but also you would have like the point totals, so you could see like who the best team in the state is in each division as well. I think that'd be kind of cool to see. It would add some excitement, I think, to the tournament as well when you
Yeah.
get down to it, because people will start following it teams sooner. around the state and go, oh man, like that team, that was a good win, or this team's just moved up to number one in their sectional. I don't know. I think it would add some excitement, but
Yeah, and it's just I don't know the people who do it, but even the seed release show, it's just a random thought. It They could do so much more with that too. I don't know exact. I mean, my creative mind just going where it's kind of quick. And I had some coaches message me and be like, "Oh, we never got talked about." And I so I messaged Brett Pickerts and I was like, "Dude, we should do our own show and actually like go in on the details and stuff." And it was our best episode to date. Um, but there's just so many like cool things about this. Like high school coverage is lacking. You look at the reason NIL is coming to high school is because there's talented people, worth something. The coaches are awesome. I tell people all the time, I don't think the gap between college and high school coaches is that big. I think there is gap, but I don't think it's that wide. I just think it's opportunity. Someone got an opportunity and somebody didn't. There's brilliant high school coaches. So I think there's so much more we can do to keep growing the high school game. I don't want it to become a situation where kids lose kind of their humanity a little bit. Like still be kids, I think is a big deal. So like I don't think negatively talking about kids or situations or I'm kind of against the NIL because I just want you to be kids and not grow up so fast, especially now as a dad of two boys. So there's little things like that. The third one, Jay, was and it sounds like this might already be a thing, just a coaches advisory committee that like coaches from different areas are have a not a say but some sort of comments on like who the teams they think should be the top teams and see if it lines up. I don't know how that would work, but it sounds like they're already doing something like that.
yeah, I mean that's more the committee that's currently working on this is more focused on the formula than they are like looking at like after the fact, like are there changes like this team shouldn't have been here, or this team shouldn't have been here. I would say what that could look like, and this is just me speaking. This isn't. I'm not representing anybody in this
Yeah.
comment, but you know, um, I think it'd be cool to find like a group of retired coaches, a mix of retired coaches from around the state who still follow the basketball around the state really closely, and let the computer kick out its seating, and then before you release it to the public, have those guys comb through and say, is there any glaring issues that stick out, like that you know about, or that you've seen, or that add that human factor back in from some guys like, and they do this in college football a little bit. They have a committee that follows teams and knows like, hey, you know what? That they had somebody out the whole year that just came back, and that that maybe they don't deserve this seed. Let's maybe bump them up one spot, and then and have them have a vote. Like maybe there's 9 guys on it, so you have an odd number, And
Yeah.
hey, what about this school? What do you guys think? Let's should we move them up or not? Let's vote. Boom.
Right.
Like, right. Yep, we all agree. Let's move it up. The public would never know that. It's behind the scenes. It's before the seating gets released. I think having a knowledgeable group though, that if they could get their hands on the computer seating starting again in January, and they could start following some of these, here's some potential problems that we're seeing right now. They might be able to kind of troubleshoot some of these things before we get to the actual seating release, for the final time. And I don't know. I don't know how feasible that is. Are there enough retired coaches or people out there that would be really good for this or not? And if there's
Yeah.
not, then what's the point in doing it? You're just muddying the waters probably a little bit, but
Yeah, I think of someone like Brett Pickerts who, I don't know if he's announced his job change and stuff, so I'll just leave that be. But that dude watches so much basketball. When we were doing our preview show, I said, dude, I'm not going to talk about D5. I haven't watched a single game this year. He's like, oh, I've watched this team and this team and this team. And I was up till midnight watching this team and this team and this team. And that, I feel like somebody like that, so it is possible. Like somebody like
yep.
that could give very knowledgeable information that's clear they've watched it. There's no agenda. There's no buddy system. And like you said, not a current coach, but I do think that's at least reasonable. Is there anything from all these, rule change, rule proposals, any other thoughts you have on any of that?
Yeah, I guess I'll just finish this thought with the seating since we're on it right now. You know, People can complain as much as they want, like if they got screwed or they, whatever, it didn't turn out the way they thought it should, or the computer's not doing great. But it still comes down, you still got to win basketball games,
Hmm.
and it's maybe affecting you for one round, but if you get past the first 2 rounds and you're in a regional final, you're in a sectional, you're going to play good teams and you're going to have to win games against good teams. And I just think, a lot of people want something to talk about or complain about, but when it really comes down to it, your team still has to go win those games. And I get
Hmm.
it. Maybe you had to take a tougher path because you got a tougher first round opponent than you would have had you got a different seed. That's a fair argument, and I understand that. But again, if you're going to make it to state, it means you're a dang good team, and you had to win some tough games to get there. It's never going to be just an easy path for anybody to just walk through to a state title or state semifinals or even a state quarterfinals if we get to that point. And so, I would challenge people again to get your facts right, research it before you have an opinion, and then post your opinion once you think you really understand it. Post your opinion, because you never know. I mean, you might have something, you might be onto something, and maybe you've looked at something differently than the rest of us have. But again, there are a lot of eyes on this, and I think it'd be I'd be surprised if we're missing some angle that hasn't been discussed or hasn't at least been brought to the attention of people. It's not like you're not going to come up with a new revelation that nobody thought of. It's like this is most of the things you're sitting at home complaining about or worried about. People are talking about them, and they're working to get them right, or do their best. So
Post your opinion and don't take the responses personally because you posted it. It's something I just want to throw out there. There'll be times where I'll respond to something or post something, and someone will respond with, "You suck, your wife sucks, everyone sucks." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I just had an opinion about basketball." Like it's a fickle beast, man. Be careful before you hit send out there, and make sure you
hey,
have thick enough skin to handle it.
and it's still and always will be. It's a game that kids get to play, and I think we got to remember that kids play this game.
Yep.
As the adults, let's let them play. Let's let them be kids and go play with their friends and enjoy the game and build great relationships and use it as a vehicle to be better people as they get older. And I know in our program we stress that so much. Yeah, we want to be successful, but man, we want to enjoy the heck out of each other and have fun playing a game that we all love, and that's why we do it. So
Yep. That's my just little worry about NIL and all the sideline cameras and all the personal player rankings. And that's why on this podcast I committed to we're not going to talk about
no,
players. We're not ranking players. We're not just coaches and strategy. I'm very weary of what how much we're going to put on kids in these next few years. I mean, you go to any game now and you see three cameras along the sideline. We're like, is this the Brooklyn Nets in town? Like, I don't understand this process. Like, just be kids. And my last comment on the seedings, the best year we ever had, I was in the hardest sectional I'd ever been in by far. You just got to win. Like you got to win the games, and by the grace of God, we did, and it'll be a fond memory forever. But either way, like I could have complained the team that beat us. Um, they you could have argued they shouldn't have even been there. That was the year of the big brawl after the
no.
game, and everyone said they shouldn't have been there. And I had some kids complaining about it after the fact, and I was like, guys, like I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. We'd have played an awesome team if it was them, if it was Dominican, if it was Catholic Memorial. Those were the three teams. Like, no matter who we would have played, it would have been a really good team in the sectional final. So, like, it's the playoffs, man. You're going to have to buckle up and play somebody good.
No doubt, no doubt. And like I said, the seeding will never be right, so we just got to keep in mind you still got to win games no matter where they put you.
Yep. Hey, I have one question for you before we get to our announcement.
Yeah.
And before I ask this question, if you want to help us grow, I really want to shine a light on high school coaches. It really helps me if you rate the show after you listen to it. Hopefully, it's not a one or a two, but be honest. If it is, I guess, then rate it a one or a two. My question is this is going to play Monday, and it'll be a few weeks from summer. What's one thing you would advise? Someone that's new to coaching, someone that's in a rut, um, about a way to attack summer, a mindset, a philosophy, or anything like that.
I guess the thing I've learned over, 18 years being a head coach, I would just say focus on developing skills. I think it's easy to lose sight when you're figuring out what summer league do I want to be in or what tournaments are we going to or team camps. And that's all great. Kids love that. And, there should be a time for playing games in the summer too and kind of putting some of that together. But, you know, you got to get the kids in the gym, and it's a time for them to really work on developing their skill. That kid that was, your seventh man last year, if he's working his butt off all summer, he's not going to be your seventh man next year. And you're responsible for helping his growth in the summer. I know in our state we get access to our kids from June 1st to July 30th. We can work with them, as coaches, as high school coaches, and so our kids come in every morning and we do a little over an hour's worth of skill work, and then we go lift together, and that's part of our daily routine of what we expect out of our players. And we try to run a little bit like a college program that way, but we still go play games, but I'm not going to go play 40 games in the summer. Like,
Yeah.
we only played 24 during the regular season. Like, why would we go play 40 games in the summer? Like, I just, that's me personally. And I know there's other coaches with different philosophies on this, and you have plenty of coaches that come through on your show that would maybe say differently. But I want to spend more time in the gym developing our kids and working on the skills and installing things that we want to get in place before we get to November. And that's
Yeah.
really what I focus on. And then that way we can, as we're putting stuff in and we're working on stuff, we then can use those league games to go, how's it working? We're not worried about wins and losses so much, but how are we developing? Are we getting better every week? Are we seeing signs of improvement because we've been working on these skills, or this, putting in this twist to our offense, or whatever it might be? And I don't know. I think that's part of it. And then the last thing I would just say is, don't forget to have fun with your team in the summer. It's one of the few times where you don't have the weight of school sitting on the kids, and you can go do some fun things. You can do some cookouts, or do something that's not basketball related, that is team building, that just allows you the freedom of having that extra time because we don't have school in session, to be able to
Mhm.
really spend some time and get to know your kids and get to know their families if you want to make them a part of it. But I just think that can be really valuable for anybody, but certainly young coaches as they're trying to get their programs off the ground. The summer can be really crucial and a fun time to be a part of your program.
Powerful, because don't underestimate the power of just rolling a ball out there and say play 3-on-3. Like the little things that remind you that you said it earlier. This is a game that kids play. It should be fun at some point. If it's not fun, especially in the summer, then you're doing it wrong. So I remember this, Jay, when I was your JV coach. I loved Summer League at Pewaukee. I literally, that was my favorite time of the year. I told Natalie, I said, I can't wait for Summer League. I don't care about the season or anything right now. Summer League is where it's at. I roll my windows down. I drive through, Pewaukee Beach to the high school, hear all the boats and other people outside, and then go coach a Summer League game and have fun. In my first few years as a varsity coach, I was miserable. And I started asking myself, why has this thing that I loved become stressful? And it's because I place so much emphasis on success. And what I learned later on was I should never really care if I won or lost a summer league game, like ever. And what I ended up doing as a result is I started going, how can I make this experience beneficial to my team and fun? And what I came to was beneficial to my team was I want to try out new things. I every summer league game, I tried out a different zone, I tried out a different offense. I didn't view it as my time to polish my stuff. I viewed it as my time to see what works and what doesn't work. What can I throw out of my backpack in a late December game, or what can I keep in store for maybe a playoff run? And I was a coach who ran so many different zones, so many different little sets and things like that, because I was constantly trying new things in summer league. And we lost almost every game because we weren't running, our stuff, quote unquote. But it was so beneficial. And then the fun part was I'd tell the kids, be the player you want to be in summer league. This is your chance, because I was scarred from high school basketball. My coach never let me try to be a scorer. Is just do this, sit in the corner, and that sort of thing. And that scarred me as a kid, and it wasn't fun. And I told these kids, I don't want a bunch of ball hogs, but I do want you to try to be the kid you think you are. So if I put you in the post and you think you're a guard, you really think you're a guard, and you really want a shot, here's your shot. Let's see it. And if it's not good, it's not good. And if it's great, then you proved me wrong, and that's awesome for you. So that's not for everyone. I think everyone's got their own thing, but that's how I attacked the summer, and I feel like it really helped me during the season.
Yeah, and you can certainly, your team could learn to win and lose in the summer, like win the right way, lose the right way. There's that side of it. But again, something that we measure that has nothing to do with wins and losses is, I want to see us play hard at summer league. I want us to give effort, because you've been at summer league games where it can get like well, we're just not going to play hard. We're down 20. It's like we're just going to chuck shots and walk up and down the floor. Like I don't want my kids to ever do that. We're always going to
Yeah.
play hard. We're going to give effort, and then I want to see what our energy's like. How are we as teammates? Are we bringing the energy? Are we giving energy to our teammates and getting people, excited when somebody checks out? Are we giving some high fives? Like that sort of stuff. Like again, makes it fun. Like it gets the kids excited and makes it fun for them. But it's not a win loss thing. There's no pressure on it. It's just everybody can play hard. Everybody can be a good teammate and have energy.
Mm,
Let's go do those things every time we play a game this summer. And I think
absolutely.
having that message can change kids' outlook or perspective on how they view coming into a night where they have to go play 2 games or 3 games or whatever it might be.
Right, absolutely. So let's end with this, Jay. Our big reveal about what's coming up. So here's a backstory. Last year, November, I started this podcast. So as the season started, and my idea was to have a different coach on every episode, and it was really cool, highly engaging, and it was awesome to learn from different people. The downside is it's really hard to sync up schedules with a different coach every single week throughout the season, especially with how busy they are. So I'm driving home the other day, talking to my wife, Natalie, and I said, Natalie, I have an idea. I really want to ask someone to be a regular and do like a hard knocksy, go through the season with them and just 30 minutes a week. What did you do for tryouts? What did you look for? How did that go? How did the team meetings go this week? Or you played this team, they ran a zone. What were you thinking? Or when the ref called at the end of the game, what did you say to him? And I think that stuff is super important for young coaches and developing coaches to get an insight into the entire process of a season. So I said, my first thought is Jay. And she just said, tell me about that. Why Jay? And I said, because one, I think he's one of the best dudes I know. He's just a good guy. And I think anytime you can partner with a good guy, you win. He was my mentor. You were the varsity coach to my JV coach. So we have a good relationship. And I feel like I get you, you get me. And then I was like, I just think it would be an easy, fun conversation. And our schedules would align because I know he gets out early and I'm off Fridays. I think it would be awesome. But I don't think he's going to want to do it because it's so much work to do a weekly commitment. So I'll just throw it out there. And I texted you, and within 30 seconds, you're like, I'm in. And I was like, let's go. So I want you to tell people what excites you about this whole process, about, sharing things you've learned with developing younger coaches or maybe veteran coaches. What excites you about that?
Yeah, Hunter. First of all, it was never a thought to it. I was in from the minute you text me, like you said, and certainly want to help you out in any way I can help you. And I enjoy talking with you, and that's part of it. But I look at it as an opportunity not only to spotlight my program and the kids, that I'm working with and the coaches that I'm working with, but also just to give some insight as to what does it look like weekly as a coach? Like, what are you thinking about? What are you worried about? What are you excited about? With your team, with parents, with boosters, whoever you might deal with in your week. What are you looking forward to, and what do you have on your plate? What's your checklist look like, for the week to make sure that you're getting through it? And I think it's basketball's a long season, and being able to share your thoughts and insights with people along the way makes the season go fast, and for me, it makes me do a little self reflection as well. Like
Hmm.
before I come on a show like this and talk for 30 minutes, like I need to think about like why did we do that this week, or what are we trying to get out of this? Like before we start sharing with a bunch of other people. But I'm excited for that, and next year will be a little different for me too here in Oconomowoc because we're gonna go down and get a lot younger. We graduated a lot of seniors, and so we kind of get to reestablish our foundation and build from there. And work with some really great young kids, and certainly our seniors coming back are great kids as well, and we love them. But it's going to be interesting trying to mix those dynamics together, bringing some young guys up with some veteran guys coming back, and I think it'll be fun to share that with everybody, and kind of give you some insights as to what we're doing and how we're doing it, I guess. So
Because I think it's valuable if you guys have a awesome season, if you have an average season, if you have a losing season, no matter what, it doesn't change who you are and your identity and your values. So we know that. So you're not going to be like, oh, I have to do this. I think it's going to help people who have been in that spot and go, what do I do? I have not won a game in 2 months. What do I do? Because I texted you my first year. I didn't win a game until January 8th, my first season. I went to Christmas break. I went to Christmas with my family, and I was so sad and so depressed. And you were like, dude, like your story is not written. You just keep chugging along, keep chugging along, keep chugging along. And we did, and it worked. And I played all freshmen and sophomores that year, and I took it on the chin. And we had set school records there all their senior year. So like that advice from you was so valuable to me, which I think is going to be really fun. And Jay, I think another thing that would be fun would be to get your assistant Fisher on too,
Yep.
or maybe you played KM and we can get Rickard on too, and just be like, what did you guys think when you were game planning? I think that stuff would be really fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I think it could be different every week, and I think that's why people should tune in and check it out next year. You know, we're gonna hit a variety of topics, and I would even challenge people that if there's something you want to hear us talk about, like throw that out to Hunter, like get him a message, and just say, hey, next week could you guys touch on this? Like, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this topic or whatever it might be. And like I said, you know, last year's my 18th year as a varsity head coach, and I spent 4 years at the college level, and you know, a lot to draw from. Losing seasons, winning seasons, everywhere in between. You know, and I hope, you know, even if you listen to us for 30 minutes and you can take one thing away from what we're talking about, for a young coach, it might even be validation of, hey, this guy's been doing this a long time, and he's going through some of the same things I'm going through. Like, I'm not doing it wrong. I feel like I'm moving the right direction here. So, you know, I think to your point, that happens, and sometimes young guys feel like, man, I must be the only guy going through this right now, or I must be the only guy feeling this way. No, I've been doing this a long time, and I still feel certain ways sometimes. So, I'm excited to share that with people. I think that'll be fun.
We know what it's like to be driving home after your 10th loss in a row, wondering if you just turn that car off the road, what would happen to you? We've all been there. So, man,
Oh
this is
man.
super exciting. And I thought that this conversation was really valuable. I hope people listen and share it with somebody. If you know another coach that's all riled up about the rules, send it to them. I think this will help you process. Next week, I have a bit of a unique episode coming out, and it's a strictly fun episode. I'm recording a podcast, Jay, with some guys from my pickup basketball league, and we're doing a draft of pickup basketball pet peeves. That's all the episode is a draft of pickup basketball pet peeves because we all know them. We're going beyond the ball hogs, the chain nets. Like, we are drafting a full team of worst case scenario pickup. So give me some advice. What's your biggest basketball pet peeve in pickup?
Oh man. That's a great question. I've never really thought about it, I guess, but you know, I would have to say number one would be just you go to get a good run in and play, and you never get to touch the ball because it's like you just, hey, I'm just screening the whole time, I guess, today. So you know, I'm just gonna run around and set screens because that guy's just shooting every time down the floor, or whatever it might be, or the guy that just doesn't want to play any defense, and you're like, we're getting our butts kicked because you don't want to guard anybody, like you just want to shoot or play offense, you know. So getting on teams with certain guys, certain personalities, I think, especially if it's like people you don't know, I think
Yeah,
that's the hard part. You go play pickup and don't know people, and it's like you're trying to feel them out, and you're like, really, that's how this guy plays all the time, you
that's
know?
right.
So
It's gonna be good, man. So you guys check it out. Next week I'll post the results of the teams. You can tell me which team is the most infuriating pickup experience. We will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening to V3.